Okay, hello everybody to this week's ISGC seminar. This week's speaker is Luc Blanchet, and first of all, thank you very much for agreeing to giving this talk. He did his PhD exactly 40 years ago, which I found out today, so I think this is also a very nice occasion to celebrate that in some sense. Then in 1990, he did his habilitation in France, and then he was for a very long time at the Centre National de la Recherche Scientifique, where he continues his position right now as a Director de Recherche Émérité. And with that, I hand over to you. Thank you very much for agreeing and giving this talk, and the stage is yours.
Thank you very much. So I am very glad to have this seminar in this series online. And so for today, we shall discuss the theory of gravitational waves and also the theory for gravitational radiation reaction for gravitational waves reacting on the source of the gravitational waves themselves using the post-Newtonian theory. So this will be essentially a post-Newtonian talk with some technical details and sometimes with long equations, but that's the way with post-Newtonian theory. So I'd like to start with some historical remarks about the Einstein quadrupole formula, which can be viewed as the Newtonian approximation to the radiation. This is a zeroth order Newtonian approximation to the radiation field when it is computed using the post-Newtonian approximation. Then I'd like to review a little bit our current post-Newtonian methods and emphasizing that this is a very rich field which has been enlarged recently by the new community coming from particle physics, and I'd like to mention that as well. Then today we discuss two more recent research topics. The first one is completion of the gravitational wave flux and waveform and orbital phase of compact binaries at 4.5 pn order beyond the Einstein quadrupole formula. Sorry, by the way, do you see my pointer on the screen?
Yes, I see it.
Okay, very good. So this is beyond the Einstein quadrupole formula, 4.5 pn order. And finally, we discuss some recent work on the radiation reaction of compact binaries at 4.5 pn order beyond the Newtonian acceleration, which corresponds to 2 pn relative with respect to the dominant radiation reaction, which is at 2.5 pn order. So let me start with some historical remarks. The first paper of Einstein on gravitational radiation was in 1916, and Einstein considered a small perturbation of the Minkowski metric of special relativity, which corresponds to the absence of gravity, at linear order beyond the Minkowski metric. Following a suggestion by the Dutch astronomer De Sitter, he used harmonic coordinates, sometimes called also De Donder, after the Belgian physicist of that time, De Donder, and he obtained very easily a wave equation for the linear perturbation. However, after a while, he received some comments from the physicist Nordström, which shows that there is actually an error by Einstein in his first paper in evaluating the energy pseudo-tensor of the gravitational waves. So Einstein has to redo another paper, a second paper, in 1918, where he corrects these errors, but very importantly, he obtains the quadrupole formula for the energy flux generated in the form of gravitational waves, total flux in all directions around the source. Unfortunately, he uses the linear theory only, where there is no gravitational interaction, and therefore his derivation of the quadrupole formula is valid only for systems with negligible internal gravity. And this is a very serious drawback of this derivation, because then the quadrupole formula will not apply to, for instance, to a binary system moving with Newtonian gravity. You have to have negligible internal gravity for this formula to hold according to the Einstein derivation. And the formula is given by here, actually is wrong by a factor 2. There is a calculational error of Einstein in the final result, but that's just a typo in the calculation. So in more modern writing, the quadrupole formula is given by this formula. It depends on the third time derivative of the quadrupole moment of the source, mass type quadrupole moment of the source, which is in this approximation, you neglect higher order relativistic correction of the order of v over c squared, where v would be the typical internal velocity inside your source. And the quadrupole moment is just at that approximation, the Newtonian quadrupole moment of the Newtonian mass density in the source. There is similarly a formula for the gravitational wave amplitude. Why is it a quadrupole? This is actually a consequence of the Einstein equivalence principle, that for all test bodies, independently of their internal structure, the inertial mass, which is the energy content of the body, is always equal to the gravitational mass, which is the analog of the electric charge in electromagnetism. The mass is constant, therefore there is no monopole radiation. The mass monopole of the source is a constant, but as noticed very early on by Abraham, even before the formulation of general relativity, because of the equivalence principle, the conservation of the center of mass and the conservation of the angular momentum, that is the laws of motion in Newtonian gravity, implies that there is no dipole radiation if there will be gravitational waves as the equivalent of electromagnetic waves, but for gravity, which general relativity didn't existed at the time. Indeed, the mass dipole moment is given by the dipole distribution of gravitational masses, but because of the equality m inertial is equal to m gravitational, this is nothing but the center of mass integral, which is constant or varies linearly with time. And similarly, the current dipole moment is nothing but the total angular momentum of the source, which is constant. So the dominant radiation in general relativity is quadruple. In 1941, there was an important derivation of the quadrupole formula by Landau and Lifshitz in their famous treaty of theory of fields. In this beautiful treaty, which is still worth to be read by even by experts nowadays, the Landau and Lifshitz write the Einstein field equations in a form which involves an object which is nowadays called a pseudo-tensor, which is a stress energy distribution of the gravitational field itself, but it cannot be, because of the equivalence principle, a tensor, so it is a pseudo-tensor, nowadays known as a Landau-Lifshitz pseudo-tensor. And this is the source in the right-hand side of the field equation under the form that they derive of the gravitational field itself. And now they obtain the quadrupole formula directly from the conservation law of the pseudo-tensor of the matter part plus the gravitational part. And the important point for us today and for gravitational wave is that the derivation is valid for a self-gravitating source. Not a weakly self-gravitating source, because the approximation is just purely Newtonian. Okay, they neglect higher order corrections, but this is not a negligibly self-gravitating source as in the derivation by Einstein, and therefore this derivation does apply to a Newtonian binary system whose motion is driven by the Newtonian gravitational force. Besides the Einstein quadrupole formula for the flux and for the radiation, there is also the notion of gravitational radiation damping and gravitational radiation reaction. As early as the 18th century, Laplace pointed out that if there would be a finite speed of propagation of gravity, then this would result in a small damping of planetary orbits, just by a geometrical effect that the planet will feel the gravitational field of the sun, for instance, a little bit delayed because of the time of propagation of gravity between the sun and the planet, for instance. Then Poincaré introduced the concept of onde-gravifique, gravitational wave, in his first theory of gravity, just after the special relativity, which was essentially a scalar theory of gravity, and he realized the Laplace effect. And in general relativity, the first calculation, I would say, of systematic calculation of radiation reaction was that of Chandrasekhar and his collaborators, who obtained the radiation reaction force and proved that the lowest order radiation reaction force is of order V over C to the fifth power, 2.5 Pn order, beyond the Newtonian force. They used a certain coordinate system. The radiation reaction depends on the choice of coordinate system, and after Burke and Thorne obtain a very simple expression of the radiation reaction force, which is given by that formula, which depends only on the mass quadrupole moment of the source, which is at that order a Newtonian quadrupole moment of the source. And here is the density, mass density of the inside the source. You see there is a factor 1 over C5, which tells you that this is 2.5 Pn order. Next order term would be V over C to the 7th power. Okay, this would correspond to 1 Pn correction to the dominant radiation reaction effect at 2.5 Pn order. And the formulas is different from the Chandrasekhar's formula, Chandrasekhar and Esposito formula, simply because of a different choice for the coordinate system. Radiation reaction is intrinsically gauge dependent, coordinate dependent. And we shall see that in our derivation in the last part of the discussion today. Besides the Einstein quadrupole formula, you have actually a kind of quadrupole formula for all the invariants, all the invariant quantities associated with the Poincaré group of a general relativistic system. You have not only the energy, the Einstein quadrupole formula, but you have also the angular momentum. The formula was derived first by Papapetrou in the 70s and derived more generally by Thorne in the 80s. Both of these formula, energy and angular momentum, are 2.5 Pn order. You see the factor 1 over C in front. And at that order, there is no linear momentum emitted by the source. Only at the next order, 1 over C7, which corresponds to 3.5 Pn order, there is a net linear momentum which is extracted by the gravitational waves, and this implies a net recoil of the source at 3.5 Pn order. And this is made of a coupling between the quadrupole of the source and the mass quadrupole and the mass octupole, sorry, of the source. And then there is also a contribution, which is a coupling between the mass quadrupole of the source and the current type quadrupole of the source, the analog of the magnetic type moments of electromagnetism. And more recently, it has been realized that actually there is also one invariant which is missing in this list, is the center of mass position. And as you know, the center of mass position, the center of mass invariant, is very important because this is the invariant which is a consequence of the invariance by Lorentz boost in the Poincaré group. Lorentz boost implies the conservation of the position of the center of mass. And to this center of mass position, there is also a flux which is associated, which has been computed quite recently, actually, and which is given by that formula. So the picture is complete. Note that the energy here, the angular momentum there, and so on, correspond to matter quantities. These are the quantities that can be attributed to the matter system, while obviously the integrated fluxes in the right-hand side of these balance equations can be attributed to the radiation. So there is a conservation, global conservation, of all these quantities, but corresponding to the total system made of the matter plus the radiation. And then the picture is consistent. So let me describe a little bit post-Newtonian method. Generally, these methods are described when they are applied to a binary system in the following picture, where in the horizontal axis you have the mass ratio between the two particles, the two black holes in a black hole binary systems, and in the vertical axis you have essentially the distance between the two black holes, which correspond to the inverse of the compactness of the binary system. So when the mass ratio is arbitrary, can be comparable masses or extreme mass ratio case, and when the distance of the two black holes is large enough, the black holes are far apart from each other, the orbital velocities of the two black holes are small with respect to the speed of light, then the post-Newtonian approximation will be very important and valid in that regime. When the regime is strong, the field, this is a strong field regime, okay, the two black holes are very close to each other, close to the merger, and then the mass ratio between the two black holes is small, then this is a regime of the perturbation theory. We shall say that the motion and radiation of the small black hole is given by a perturbation of the black hole, the geometry of the black hole, the background given by the black hole, the big mass, which is a big black hole in that regime. When the mass ratio is of the order of 1 for comparable masses, and also when you are in the strong field regime, then essentially you have to resort to a numerical calculation. We shall now describe more in detail the post-Newtonian approach to all these problems. Concerning the motion, the post-Newtonian approach consists in deriving to very high order the post-Newtonian equations of motion for a compact binary system, say, which are written as perturbation of the Newtonian law of gravity, which is the first term there. And then there will be a 1pn correction, which is 1 over c squared beyond the Newtonian approximation. This 1pn correction has been computed in the early days of general relativity by Lorentz and Drost, and rediscovered in the 30s in the famous paper by Einstein, Infeld, Hoffman, by means of a method which was much more complicated, and the result was not as complete as the one of Lorentz and Drost. At that order, there is a well-known relativistic precession of the periastron of the binary system due to these 1pn corrections. This is well known in the solar system, in binary pulsars, and so on. The system at that order is still conservative. There is a conserved energy because the radiation reaction can be neglected at that order. Similarly, at 2pn order, this is still conservative. There is a conserved energy, angular momentum, and so on at that order. And only at 2.5pn order, there is a radiation reaction. Okay. 3pn is again a conservative approximation. Then 3.5pn order is a 1pn correction to the 2.5pn radiation reaction. And as I said before, it contains the gravitational wave recoil of the source. Okay. And at 4pn order, this is essentially conservative, but there is also an interesting effect due to gravitational wave tails at that order. And this part of this effect can be interpreted as a radiation reaction. So there are both conservative effects and radiation reaction effects. So the state of the art now is 4pn. Everything is known at 4pn order by various groups working with different methods, different coordinate systems, and so on. All agree on the result in the end. And in the last part of the talk, I will discuss the next order term, which is V over C to the 9 power, 4.5 pn order, and we shall derive it, and this will be again associated with radiation reaction. So the methods are generally for post-Newtonian. There are traditional methods in classical general relativity. There are Hamiltonian methods. There is a Fokker action method, Lagrangian method called the Fokker action, which can be applied very well to post-Newtonian theories. There are other methods that I will not describe here. But recently, there have been new methods that are inspired by quantum field theory, which recompute many post-Newtonian results using methods borrowed from quantum field theory. And there are essentially two categories of methods: the effective field theory, which is very close to the post-Newtonian or post-Minkowskian approximation, except that there are diagrams that are used, Feynman type diagrams that are used to compute the equivalent of Pn and Pm, post-Minkowskian and post-Newtonian, done by using traditional method in classical GR. And there is also another approach, the scattering amplitude approach, which is very efficient and quite different, and especially which is able to do a gauge independent way of the computation, which is in sharp contrast with traditional method, which need to be defined in a specific coordinate system, for instance, the harmonic coordinate system. Common to all these methods, except these two methods, but I will not discuss them, common in these methods is the use of dimensional regularization. There will be UV divergences, and the UV divergences are associated with, due to the fact that we model compact objects using delta functions. So compact objects are modeled as point particles with delta functions. There could be spins and also maybe some internal structure of the bodies, but still there is a delta function involved. And so there are divergences, and these divergences are dealt with dimensional regularization. And it has been shown that the divergences imply that there is a pole in the dimension starting at 3pn order, which is quite far. At 3pn order, you have to deal with the poles due to the point particle modeling compact object of compact object. And on the other hand, you have infrared divergences also in the problem that are due technically in the post-Newtonian approximation because you integrate over all space some formal Pn quantities that are valid only in the near zone of your system. These infrared divergences appear at 4pn order. Exactly. So we shall maybe see that a little bit more in the talk. So the Fokker action for n particles has been very useful in post-Newtonian expansions for the conservative part of the equations of motion, for the motion. So essentially, this is defined by the Einstein-Hilbert action for a system of point particles. You can add, if you like, spins or more complicated terms describing the internal structure of your particles. And the Einstein field equation, the Einstein-Hilbert action, should be gauge fixed. So you add a term to fix the gauge, for instance, with two harmonic gauge. And then you derive the field equations from that action. You solve these field equations using your standard Pn iteration of the field equations. So this gives you a metric, which is a function functional of the particles, positions, velocities, acceleration, and so on, that you plug back, insert back into the action in order to have an action which depends only on the matter. And so this is the action from which you can derive your field equations. Sorry, your equations of motion for the particles. And this will be valid for a self-gravitating system of particles for which the field, the metric, is generated by the particles themselves. The effective field theory approach borrows techniques from quantum field theory, as I said. So you will have two particles which form a quadrupolar gravitational wave source. The particles will emit radiation which correspond to a graviton which is emitted by the system, which will escape to infinity. That will be the quadrupole formula, okay, generated by the mass quadrupole of the source. And then you can also describe radiation reaction. A graviton will be emitted and then reabsorbed by the system. This will correspond to the radiation reaction effect. And you can go in that way. And you have a complete diagrammatic expansion in effective field theory, which is completely equivalent to the post-Newtonian, traditional post-Newtonian expansion, provided that you neglect quantum loops in the diagram. That is, you stay at the level of tree diagram. You neglect purely graviton loops in the diagrams in order to recover the classical post-Newtonian expansion of your equations of motion or of your radiation field. For instance, you will have some tail effects which correspond to a coupling between the radiation and the mass of the source, which correspond to a graviton which is emitted by your source, and then interacts with the Newtonian or Coulombian, if you like, field of your associated with the mass of the source. There will be coupling between two gravitons, and then production of a graviton which goes to infinity. This will contain the memory effect, which appears at 2.5 p.n. order. Radiation reaction at 2.5 p.n. order is described like that. There will be a tail in radiation reaction, which is a 4 p.n. effect, and so on. And so the expansion is completely equivalent at the tree-level diagrams. For concerning the radiation field, the method that has been quite successful, very successful to compute gravitational wave templates for compact binaries is called the multipolar post-Minkowskian expansion. So this is a mix-up between post-Minkowskian expansion in powers of G, and expansion in multiple moments. So the starting point is the Thorne's linearized solution, which is the solution of the Einstein field equations in vacuum, which correspond to outside the system, a matter system. You have an isolated matter system. You look for your solution of the linearized equation, Einstein field equations, outside your matter source in the form of multipolar series involving multiple moments. There will be the mass type moment, M, and the current type moment, S. And starting from that linearized solution, long time ago, with Thibaut Damour, that was actually my PhD thesis 40 years ago, then we iterated this Thorne solution at linear order up to any order in powers of G. And therefore, we had the most general solution of the Einstein field equations outside a matter source, in vacuum outside a matter source, described by multipolar series of multiple moments, okay? The way we did that, the iteration, there is a trick which is involved. Since you consider only multiple expansions, there will be a divergence when R tends to 0, okay? Because the multiple expansion is not valid inside your source. And we deal with that by introducing a finite part procedure based on analytic continuation in some parameter B. B, a complex number, and so on. So this is a way to treat UV divergences when R tends to 0, but this is a very flexible way, and so we could proceed to any order in G in order to get this solution. When the solution is obtained, we can expand the solution very far away from the source, notably at future null infinity, and we find that this solution is in agreement with the Bondi-Sachs-Penrose formalism, which is defined in the asymptotic regions far from the source. The multipolar post-Minkowskian expansion has to be matched somehow to the source, and for that, we do that. So we match it to a post-Newtonian expansion inside the source. So this is why there is a Pn here. And there is a general way to do that. We use a matching equation, which is a variant of the theory of the matched asymptotic expansions, where we impose that the multiple expansion denoted by M of the field H, when you re-expand it in the near zone, should agree with the multiple expansion of the post-Newtonian expansion inside. And by applying that, we find formally a formal but valid at any order in the approximation solution, which is valid both in the exterior and the interior. So this is that solution which is applied to compact binary system for both the post-Newtonian motion and the post-Newtonian radiation at infinity. So let me describe a little bit our recent completion of the gravitational wave at 4.5 Pn order beyond the Einstein quadrupole formula for compact binaries. This was based on recent collaborations with Guillaume Faye, Quentin Henry, François Larouturou, Tanguy Marchand, and David Trestini. I said that we need absolutely dimensional regularization. There will be UV-type divergences, infrared-type divergences, and therefore we need to control the solution of the field equations in D dimension. So actually, we don't compute everything in D dimension, we compute everything in the vicinity of the physical dimension 3. So we generally assume D is equal to 3 plus epsilon and consider the limits when epsilon tends to infinity. And we discover, of course, poles associated with UV and infrared divergences, and all these poles are to be kept consistently and eventually renormalized or proved that indeed they can cancel out. So just a slide, just a technical slide to say that the Einstein field equations are considered in harmonic gauge. There will be a pseudo-tensor, which is the analog of the Landau-Lifshitz pseudo-tensor made of the matter part plus the gravitational part. And to solve the wave equation, here, the Lambertian equation, we use the Green's function in real space-time domain. Our colleagues from the effective field theory use Fourier, are in the Fourier domain, but us, we consider the Green's function in the real space. And so this is quite convenient also. And there is a function which is here associated with the space-time Minkowskian interval, which, as you know, parameterizes the Green's function of the flat D'Alembertian operator. And there are some powers here depending on the dimension. The multiple expansion outside the source, still M denotes the multiple expansion, will be a retarded solution of the vacuum field equations, because this is outside the source, okay? This is made of a particular solution which involves this regularization that I was mentioning before, using in the multipolar post-Minkowskian approximation. And then there will be a crucial homogeneous solution which solves the wave equation in D dimension. This is homogeneous solution, okay? And this solution contains all the information regarding the source in the form of multiple moment functions, okay, that are, for convenience, symmetric trace-free tensors with L indices corresponding to any L multipolar order. And these moments will, via the nonlinearities of the field equation in the exterior of the source, will generate the full multiple expansion. So they have to plug that into that, iterated in a formal way, and this is described completely by such a formula. The multiple moment functions that are here, which describe the source, are related by matching to the source by such a formula. There will be an integral over the source of the pseudo-tensor, which contains the matter plus the gravitational field. The integral has to be regularized, and this is, in that way, an infrared regularization, which comes directly with the procedure that we had before, which was a UV regularization for the field, and now it comes out to be an infrared regularization for the bond of the integral at infinity. This infrared regularization has to be cured somehow and will generate poles at 4p order, as I was saying. And actually, there is two regularization. In principle, there is a dimensional regularization as well. And what we do, this is our way of doing the regularization, is that we first apply the limit b tends to 0, and prove that the limit is finite in generic dimensions. G is equal to 3 plus epsilon. And only then we, so then B is equal to 0, and we recover the usual dimensional regularization. So this is something which is a bit strange for some of our colleagues. Because the effective field theory approach does not seem to use the equivalent of the B. However, if some of you are interested to discuss, I can show you exactly the way why we need this regularization, which reduces only in the second stage to the usual dimensional regularization. Anyway, this regularization permits to do computation by Mathematica without having any divergence in the way through all the calculation, and this is quite efficient. So now we have the multiple moments that are STF with respect to the L indices, and that contain space-time indices. And now we have to derive the mass and current irreducible multiple moments. So just to flash some formulas that we have, the components of this multiple moment 0, 0, 0, I, ij are decomposed in STF tensors without using epsilon Levi-Civita symbols, because such symbols do not exist in d dimensions. So this is the main problem. In particular, we have to define properly the current type multiple moments in d dimensions without using epsilon Levi-Civita symbols. This is all the purpose of this formula. And we see that there are mass type moment contributions in pink color, current type contribution in red, and there is also a Weyl contribution in blue, which disappears in d dimensions. The mass moments are given by ordinary STF tensors that have just symmetric, the symmetries of a symmetric Young tableau. The current type contribution have the symmetries of a more complicated mixed Young tableaus, and the Weyl contribution is given as a symmetries, even more complicated symmetries, but this Weyl contribution is absent in 3 dimensions. And this is exactly like the case of the Weyl tensor in 3 dimensions, which vanish in 3 dimensions, and the number of components of this object is exactly the same number of components of the Weyl tensor. So this Weyl tensor, Weyl moment, Weyl type moment, disappears in 3 dimensions and can be completely ignored using our dimensional regularization. Okay, so now we have good definitions for all the mass multiple moments and current multiple moments. And we have computed in series of papers, and actually this started long time ago at 2pn order, then 3pn, and now 4pn order. And let me just comment on the 4pn mass quadrupole moment. So, as expected, we know that there are UV divergences which start actually at 3pn order. And we have proved that all these divergences, UV divergences, can be treated by dimensional regularization, that there are poles which remain, but the poles can be renormalized by some appropriate shifts of the particles worldline. Okay. At 4pn order, a new feature also is that there is a non-local in time term associated with tails, which plays a crucial role when computing the infrared regularization, because there are some crucial infrared poles that are associated with this non-local tail term in the quadrupole moment. Now, there are also infrared divergences, which start at 4pn order. Actually, they start at 3pn order, but they are cancelled by poles coming from nonlinear tail effect, tail of tail effect propagating in the wave zone. But at 4pn order, there are intrinsic contributions that are computed using dimensional regularization and which contribute beyond the poles and which remain at 4pn order. And so we have included all these consistently in the approximation and prove that the infrared poles are cancelled by the poles coming from the tails together with the poles coming from nonlinear iterations, tails of memory, and so on, that are nonlinear contribution in the wave propagation and reacting on the computation of the multiple moments. So finally, we have obtained in these papers the finite renormalized 4pn quadrupole moment of the compact binary that we have used to define the 4pn, 4.5pn templates for compact binaries. On the other hand, we have to worry also about the propagation effects. And the propagation effects are described in some quadrupole moment that is observed at infinity and which differ from the source quadrupole moment by nonlinear corrections. You will have tails of memory, tails of tails, and tail of tail, which is an effect which appears at 4.5pn order. And there is also at 4pn order an effect which is called tails of memory. And this was a new nonlinear effect that appears at 4pn order. And I'd like to show you a little bit how well the result for this gravitational wave tails of memory contribution. So this contribution corresponds to the Feynman type diagrams that are the three diagrams that are shown here, where you will have two gravitons emitted by your compact binary source, described by your quadrupole moment, which interact in the way through the Coulombian Newtonian field associated with the mass of the source, total mass, ADM mass, and then produce a graviton which contributes to the waveform at 4pn order. Or there will be also this contribution, where the interaction through the mass is at that level. And there is also a cubic interaction between all that is cubic, corresponding to three linear waves, two with quadrupoles, one with mass, which interact to produce the gravitons at infinity. This corresponds exactly to a split that we can do in our traditional PN calculation corresponding to these three types of diagrams. And the result that we obtain is that at 4pn order, corresponding to this interaction between two quadrupoles and the mass, we have the following terms. First, there is a term with a double integration on the two quadrupole moments, which vary. multiplied by the mass in front. And this is 1 over C8, and indeed, this is a 4pn term. Plus many terms that are tail-like integrals. So there would be these terms, and then there is a log term, which is the usual formula for tails. And you can have also a moment which is outside the integral. And so you have all these tail terms that are quite trivial, whose structure is well known. However, what is important is to compute in detail all these coefficients, and there are arbitrary constants in the way that you have to prove that they will cancel properly in the end. And the first term, which is a tail of memory, actually is not new and could have been guessed before, because it can be recovered, this term, from the general expression for the memory effect. The memory effect is at 2.5 pn order, okay? And then if you include in the memory effect the tails effect, which is 1.5 pn order, you get this term. So our general calculation, we were quite glad that this general calculation recovered exactly this part of the waveform, which is known from the general formalism for memory, and that was quite satisfying. And finally, there are all these constants, and we prove that all these constants cancel out. But before that, there was another feature of the calculation that was taken into account, that we must take into account, is that at 4pn order, there is also an effect which is due to tails, which implies that there is a modulation of the phase of gravitational waves. The phase of gravitational waves differs from the orbital phase of the compact binary system by a logarithmic term. This term implies that the gravitational wave frequency, which is the time derivative of the orbital phase, of this phase, will be shifted with respect to the orbital frequency. And so we have a correction which is there. This involves the time derivative of the orbital frequency, and the time derivative of the orbital frequency is given by radiation reaction effects. This is a 2.5 pn order effect. And since there is 1 over C3, which is 1.5 pn, this means that this is a 4 pn effect. So we have also to take into account that the measured phase of the gravitational wave and the measured orbital frequency of the gravitational waves are shifted by a 4pn term, crucial 4pn term, with respect to the orbital quantities. And only if we do that, do we discover that all these arbitrary constants that we had on all way through the calculation and so on cleanly disappear in the end, so that you have the complete final result. So let me flash the final result that we have for the flux, for the total energy flux, which is very important for the template, at that order, 4.5 pn order. So the dominant order is a Newtonian quadrupole formula. U is the mass ratio between the two objects. X is the small Pn parameter of the order of 1 over c square, which is defined using the orbital frequency of the wave. And so there will be the 1 pn correction, the 1.5 pn correction, which is a tail, 2 pn. This is a 1 pn correction to the tail, 3 pn, 3.5 pn, and here is our new 4 pn correction, okay, which is complete at any order in the mass ratio, of course. This calculation is valid for any mass. And at 4.5 pn order, this was computed a little bit before, and this is due to a tail of tail interaction. It's a quartic effect which was known before, and so now the result is complete at 4.5 PN order. So the first test that we can make is that in the test mass limit, we should retrieve exactly the result of linear black hole perturbation. That is, this term, that one, but not this one, this one, but not this one, and so on, should be exactly identical to linear black hole perturbation. And the calculation was done a long time ago by Tagoshi, Sasaki, and Tanaka. And this is exactly the agreement is perfect for all these terms. For instance, this one, plus this one, plus this one, all that is in complete agreement with the linear black hole perturbation CE. Can we go further in this test? Yes, because linear black hole perturbation theory is actually a case, particular case of the general theory of gravitational self-forces. When you have a big black hole and a small black hole orbiting around the big black hole, in first approximation, the small black hole will move on a geodesic of the black hole spacetime. In first deviation, there will be a gravitational self-force which deviates from the background geodesic of the small black holes, associated with the big black hole, sorry. And in the lowest order, for the geodesic motion, this will produce at infinity the terms that were computed here. That is this one, plus this one, plus this one, in principle at any order in the PN expansion, okay? And now, if you include the perturbation, the self-force in the motion of the small black hole around the big black hole, this will produce, and if you include also all the perturbation in the wave propagation to infinity, this will give you the next order terms in the mass ratio. For example, this one, but not this one, okay? All that is the framework of the second order self-force calculation, which has been developed recently, donc up to second order in the mass ratio, okay, O of small m square over big M square, which has been developed recently both for the motion and for the radiation to second order in the mass ratio. So what we do in this comparison is that we assume that we have a system where the two black holes are far apart so that you can use post-Newtonian theory, but also which involves a small mass ratio so that you can also use your self-force calculation. So I was saying that using this work, we have checked the linear first-order self-force theory, which is actually a black hole perturbation theory with a geodesic motion of the source at that order. And now we can check the next order corrections also in U compared to second order self-force calculations. So this is the result of these plots, this first plot. So we compare the 4.5 PN flux with the second order self-force result. The self-force result is numerical. At second order self-force, it cannot be computed analytically for the moment, at least. So these are the dots that are here, against which we plot the corresponding PN approximation. So this is for the second order, which corresponds to the term cubic in mu cube. There is a mu square here, and a mu here, which is, we test cubic term here. And for both, we plot the various PN approximations, and overall, we see that the PN approximation, notably the 4 PN here and the 4.5 PN here, are quite close to the numerical self-force result, even in a regime where the relativistic parameter here, x, is quite large, which corresponds to a very relativistic regime in the post-Newtonian language. as compared to the weak field regime where the post-Newtonian expansion is quite good. But nevertheless, in this relativistic regime, we see a quite good approximation, a quite good comparison between second-order cell force and 4.5 PN approximation, and 4 PN approximation. By the way, you see that before some approximations are quite bad. 3 PN, for instance, 3.5 PN is not very good. 1 PN is surprisingly good, but okay, it's only when you go to 4.5 PN order that apparently we get a good agreement with the second order cell force. Here are shown the flux for the complete one order cell force plus two second order cell force that is involving the mass ratio, okay, as compared to the PN up to 4.5 PN order plus the terms corresponding to second order, okay. And you see again a good agreement. At first order, you have a good agreement between post-Newtonian, which is the line, and the cell force result. However, this is far away from the expected result. That the expected result is the one much closer to the real problem, which is given by the second order cell force. This can be seen in a better way in this plot, which corresponds to a small mass ratio, 1/10, which is the regime of the cell force. And you see that the PN and the cell force agree quite well in this regime, in the weak field regime. There is a departure of the PN, which is no longer valid in the strong field regime, but the cell force is very good and agrees very much with the numerical relativity calculation, which is valid only in that region and does not exist in that region. So we see a very nice synergy between the three approximation methods, the numerical one, the cell force one, which agree well, and then there is a mutual agreement with the PN, and then the PN is better for the weak in the weak field approximation. So all that seems to be quite good. So I think that I have still a few minutes to discuss the second topic that I wanted to discuss with you, the problem of the radiation reaction, and this is based on a recent collaboration with Guillaume Faye and David Prestini. So the problem of radiation reaction, this is a problem we want to define the radiation reaction and to compute the radiation reaction in the equations of motion of the compact binary. And I reproduce again this equation for the PN expansion of the acceleration of one of the bodies. And as I said before, the radiation reaction would be the second 2.5 PN term here, and then the 3.5 PN term, which would be a 1 PN correction to the lowest order radiation reaction, 2.5 PN. And then there will be a second correction, which is 4.5 PN order, which corresponds to 2 PN order beyond the leading order. And we have computed recently the complete term 1/C9 corresponding to 4.5 PN order in this equation. For this discussion, I ignore the radiation reaction contribution at 4 PN order. You remember, I remarked that there is a tail term at 4 PN order, which does contain a radiation reaction inside. This term has been computed before and is well known, and I will not discuss it and only concentrate on the computation of the 4.5 PN radiation reaction effect. So there is the radiation reaction depends on the chosen gauge. And so there is a problem to choose in a best way the gauge. Actually, we tried for a long time to do the calculation in harmonic gauge, but it turns out that the computation is quite difficult and quite messy in harmonic gauge. So we decided to turn to a different gauge, which is called after Burke and Thorne. This is an extension of the Burke and Thorne gauge, which is valid at 2.5 p.m. order, the leading order. And this has been extended at any order, but linear order, by describing the radiation reaction by three potentials: scalar potential, vector potential, and tensor potentials that are defined in terms of multiple moments. With that definition, this parameterizes the radiation reaction completely at linear order. But of course, there will be some nonlinear correction to be computed as well. But, and so here, these potentials are defined from antisymmetric retarded minus advanced waves. These are parts of the waves that are regular inside the source. You can expand it when R tends to 0, and this is finite, and actually it's say infinite. And because these are the effects of radiation reaction that are valid also inside the source, that are not only valid as multiple expansion outside the source. And multipolar such waves are obtained by applying STF multiple multi-derivative operators on these expressions. The main advantage of the extended Bergson gauge is that in that gauge, and this is in contrast with harmonic gauge, is that the scalar potential starts at 2.5 p.m. order and reproduces the Bergson scalar potential. Let me flash back the Bergson scalar potential again, which is that one. This is a purely scalar force, which derives from a potential, which is defined purely from the quadruple moment, the fifth time derivative of the quadruple moment. And at the lowest order, we recover this Bergson potential. And then there is a systematic way described here to define what are the corrections of that potential, and we find that there is a vector as well, but starting only at 3.5 p.m., and a tensor also, but which starts only at 4.5 p.m. So this gauge is very convenient to save a lot of very long calculations. As I said, this is only at linear order, and at non-linear order, you have to iterate this potential, and you will have to control several corrections at order G square beyond the radiation, these potentials that are order linear in G. And you have also some G cube to take into account. And when doing that, we obtain the, after very long calculations, we obtain the radiation reaction acceleration of the particle 1 at 2 p.m. order beyond the lowest order 2.5 p.m. order, okay? Directly in terms of the position and velocities of the particles and the multiple moments. And a nice feature of the Bergson, extended Bergson coordinate system is that we can do all the calculation by keeping the multiple moments unexpanded. That is, we don't replace the multiple moment by their explicit expression in terms of the particles, and this saves a lot of calculations. So once you have the acceleration, or the radiation reaction contribution to the acceleration, the crucial step to do is to check from these radiation reaction acceleration, to check by a calculation which is just confined into the near zone of the source. We don't speak at all of the flux at infinity, but we want to recover the flux at infinity just by this local computation with the radiation reaction force. And this is what we did. And we find that at 4.5 p.m. order, we recover exactly all the flux of energy, angular momentum, linear momentum, and center of mass position correctly. For instance, the flux of energy is valid at 2 p.m. order by all this expression and so on. And in the left-hand side of the balance equations, we shall have the conservative part, and we can use harmonic coordinate for the conservative part. And then in our coordinate systems, there will be some contributions also at these orders. 2.5 pn, 3.5 pn, 4.5 pn order. These terms are sometimes called the short terms. They depend on the chosen coordinate system. Here, the extended Bergson coordinate system. There will be other expression in harmonic coordinate, for instance. And all the game is to compute, to check the balance equations, where you recover the invariant flux at infinity in the right-hand side for some short terms in the left-hand side. And if you do that, if you succeed in that, you are done. Okay, so I will finish now by some remarks about, because there is a subtlety that we have obtained in this calculation concerning the definition of the center of mass frame that I would like to share with you. The balance equations that we obtained for linear momentum and center of mass position are given by that, where there are the flux on the right-hand side. The linear momentum and center of mass position correspond to the matter system, while the flux correspond to the emitted radiation. You can integrate this balance equation to obtain the matter quantities, and then you have on the right-hand side the contribution from radiation that come from the integration of the flux. And you have integration constants, okay, due to the integration, okay, P0i that are constant, and G0i that is constant. Now, the definition of the center of mass frame is very simple, is that this is just that the constants are zero. P0i is equal to G0i. This would correspond to the center of mass initially before radiation, emission of radiation, and the center of mass will simply be a constant for all time. And again, the center of mass is the one of the total matter plus radiation system. And the definition involves non-local in time integrated flux. The center of mass condition is therefore that Gi, the center of mass position, plus this combination of the flux of linear momentum and the flux of center of mass position should be zero. This implies in particular that the total momentum of the source plus the contribution in the radiation should be zero, and this contribution in the radiation is nothing but the gravitational wave recoil of the source. That is, we have to take into account the recoil of the source, which will be the recoil of the matter source, okay, which will be equal to minus the integrated flux of linear momentum. And there will be a position, a motion of the center of mass of your binary system, take a circular orbit. There will be a momentum ejection here, and then there will be a recoil of the source. Okay. And now we have compared. As a result, we find that at 4.5 pn order, there is a contribution due to the recoil of the source, which is non-local. And on the other hand, we compared a result to a general approach, which is called the flux balance approach to radiation reaction, which was pioneered by Ayer and Will, and then developed after that at 2 pn order by Gopakumar, Ayer and Ayer some years later. This method assumes from the start the balance equation for energy and angular momentum, and deduces from that, knowing the flux at infinity, deduces the expression of the radiation reaction force. Since the radiation reaction is gauge dependent, the result depends on a number of arbitrary gauge parameters. So you have 20 parameters at 4.5 pn order. And what we have found is that this method is perfect But however, it was developed at 4.5 p.m. order, assuming that the acceleration, the form of the acceleration, is local, and therefore overlooks the effect of the recoil. The effect of the recoil is 3.5 p.m. order, but this is in the definition of the center of mass, which affects the equation of motion at 4.5 p.m. order. So there is, at 4.5 p.m. order, non-local terms that have to be taken into account, describing the position, the recoil of the source, and the position and the flux of linear momentum and position of the center of mass. And so what we have done is that we have corrected this result by these quantities for in the acceleration and conserved quantities, involving in particular this non-local term. There are also some local terms defined with the flux. And in that way, we could compute in a unique way all the parameters from this paper by Gopakumar, Iyer and Iyer, corresponding to the flux balance equation in a unique way, which constitute a non-trivial check of the physical soundness of the radiation reaction potential that we used, and the perfect consistency with the flux balance method for the radiation reaction terms at the 4.5 p.m. order. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Luc, very much for this talk. And before I open the session for questions to the audience, can you maybe give a short outlook since the last roughly 40 years you worked on this topic? What do you envision for the next 40 years to have?
Sorry, can you repeat a little bit the question?
Okay. Since you worked the last 40 years on this topic roughly, what would you envision for the next 40 years as potential outcomes?
This is a very difficult question. Probably in 40 years from now, the next approximation will be done. I think that there will be a lot of synergy between traditional method in GR, effective field theory, scattering amplitude method, both for radiation reaction, equations of motion, conservative effects, and I think that this will continue with the synergy with cell force and so on. All these, there are a lot of things to develop still, I will believe. For 40 years, I am not sure that in 40 years there will be still some possible things to develop, but I would try to stay optimist. Okay. Already there has been some work in the equations of motion at the next approximation, 5 p.m. order. For the radiation, I think this should be more difficult, but probably it will be done. Okay, so now in 10 years from now, there will be LISA, the LISA detector. So the LISA detector, I think that 4 p.m., we did 4 p.m. for the radiation for the LISA detector, and maybe for also Einstein telescope and Cosmic Explorer as well. For LISA, I am not sure that we need to go much beyond 4 p.m. So, okay, but okay, we'll see.
Yes, thank you. And with that, I open the session to the audience. Are there any questions?
Maybe I can ask one question. Thank you very much for the talk. Could you go back to the slides where you show the comparison between the post-Newtonian and cell force?
This one?
Yes. So I'm a little bit curious about like when we start from 1 p.m. and we increase and we go to higher order, it looks like the curves do not monotonically converge to cell force. There's a kind of oscillation, right? Do you have any explanation for that?
No, there is no explanation except that we observe that from the beginning, since a long time, we know that there is a kind of erratic behavior of the lowest order PN approximation. This is only when you go to quite high approximation that you seem to converge. And I use quotation because this cannot be proved. This is a standard, and also this is standard also because here we compare with the cell force. So we compare coefficients that are valid for in the traditionally the PN approximation is not very good in the small mass ratio limit. The PN approximation is the best when the masses are comparable.
Yes.
So when you are not in very high approximation, there is this behavior. So this is something which happens with the post-Newtonian series. I would say that, and we really not clearly understand that.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Are there other questions? If not, maybe we can end the official session there. And for those people who would like to ask questions without being recorded, I hope you have still some time for